This is the story of Bob, a digital skydiving story, narrated by Scott Mitten. I had been a skydiving instructor for many years and considered skydiving an adventure sport reserved for fit, able-bodied athletes who could take care of themselves in the eventuality of an emergency. Sometimes I didn't appreciate people who would come to the airport seeking a tandem skydive and treating the experience like a carnival ride. But being a customer service business, helping less than able-bodied and resilient people was part of the job, but not really a part that I looked forward to. When a good friend Sam approached me and asked me to take his father on a skydive for his birthday, I really didn't want to, but I told Sam yes, as he was a fellow skydiver and a longtime friend. Sam's elderly father, Bob, was turning 74 years old and had advanced Alzheimer's disease. I reintroduced myself to Bob, as I had met him before, but he didn't remember. He smiled and he told me his name and he told me how he's there to make a skydive. I asked Bob if he had done it before. He smiled and said that he hadn't, and he was happy to be here, but he was a bit sad because he felt he wouldn't remember any of it. I told him, well, that's okay. We'll film it, and we'll make sure you have memories from the skydive you can watch whenever you want to. He smiled at that, and he asked if I would look at a photo of him taken in earlier days. I leaned in close to Bob to look at the photo of a handsome, strong man in a captain's uniform. It was a photo of Bob at a much younger age when he was a commercial airlines pilot for a global airline. I was impressed and said so. You're a pilot? Yes, he said, and he chuckled a bit. I am, but I don't remember any of it. I don't really remember much of anything. Bob then introduced me to Sam, explaining how Sam had been a friend for a great deal of years, although he could not really remember when or how they met. I thought to myself, how sad it must be to hear your father introduce you as a friend whom he didn't remember meeting. Minutes went by as we got ready for the skydive. I placed Bob in his harness, and Sam was joining us as he was a seasoned skydiver. We boarded the small Cessna airplane and signaled the pilot we were ready for takeoff. Soon after, we were on the runway and speeding off up into the sky. As we climbed high up over the trees, I asked Bob if he missed flying. He said he thought that he did, but he wasn't sure because he doesn't recall thinking about it too much. I asked him if he'd like to be positioned where he could see out of the window and look down at the ground below us. He was excited about that and said sure, and he was happy to do so. As I helped him peer down into a position where he could peer down from the window, Bob stared out the small window for a moment, and it looked like he was thinking. And then he turned to Sam and he said, Sam, is the airport below us Franklin Airport? Sam was shocked at this and said, well, yes, Bob, it is Franklin Airport. Bob laughed out loud and he said, since when do you call me Bob? You know, Franklin Airport is the place where I taught you and your little brother to fly. And stop calling your old man Bob. Immediately, Sam smiled and tears began to roll down his face. Bob quickly motioned to another landmark. He almost yelled as he said, look there! It's the school your mother teaches. It's right down the road. I just love being up here, Sam. You can see everything. Admittedly, tears were immediately streaming down my face. I looked over and saw the pilot wiping tears away from his as well. Bob suddenly had his memory back and was telling stories of his family as fast as words would come out of his mouth. I asked the pilot to radio at the airport and tell the ground crew of the amazing phenomenon that we were experiencing. I told him to explain to the ground that we would like to fly around a bit and let Bob reconnect with his son. The owner of the operation cried over the radio, hell yes, burn all the gas you need to. So we flew around in circles for a while, banking the airplane so Bob could have a clear view of his past. Bob reminisced with his son, and tears, laughs, and smiles were on everyone's face. Soon the pilot sadly let us know that the fuel was to a point where we could no longer safely fly around. I readied Bob for his skydive and directed the pilot to the release point. We opened the door. I asked Bob if he was ready, and when he was, I hurled both of us out into the bright sky. Bob did well in free fall, and soon we were under a marvelous safe canopy, descending toward the crowd comprised of Bob's family. We landed right at their feet, where everyone had heard of the news of Bob's memory. Hugs and tears were everywhere as Bob greeted everyone by name and told them of his adventure and how he recognized the school where his wife was a teacher and the airport where he's taught his children to fly, like he once did. 15 or so minutes went by and things started to settle down, and I walked over to check on Bob again. I approached with a smile and asked him how he was doing. "I'm doing great," he said. "I just jumped from an airplane. Have you ever done that?" I chuckled a bit, and I thought about it and said, "Well, of course, Bob. Of course I have. Sure." He smiled, he nodded his head, and went on to tell me how it was his birthday and how his good friend Sam had set it all up for him. It's then I realized, as quickly as it came, Bob's memory was gone. As quickly as it arrived in the airplane, on the ground it had now vanished. I walked back to the hangar where the jump planes are kept and students receive their instructions. I went back to set my gear down and reflected on what had just happened. As I went to my locker, I noticed new students waiting to make tandem jumps. With them were friends and family waiting to watch, and among the group of friends and family was a lady in a wheelchair. There was no indication that the wheelchair was temporary, and I was fairly sure that it was a permanent fixture in her life. I set my things down and thought a bit more about Sam and Bob and the rest of the day's events. Then I found my way over to the woman in the wheelchair, and I asked her, "Have you ever considered making a skydive or skydiving?" She said, "Well, maybe someday, but I don't know if that's even possible." She kind of motioned towards the chair as she said it. I smiled a little bit, and I thought about it, and I said, "You know what? It's definitely possible. If you'd like to consider skydiving, I'd like to help you get started."